Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bright Founders Talk at Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds, and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. My name is Matthew, and I'm joined today by Mr. Tom Riglar, who is the co-founder of a company called Moropo. How are you today, Tom?
Hey, Matt. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Terrific. Thanks for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. So, Tom, I always like to start off with a little introduction. If you could tell our viewers a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do.
I'm Tom. I'm the co-founder of Moropo, as you say, and I'm primarily a developer and entrepreneur. So I've written a lot of code in my time, and I've worked in a lot of startups, typically in the founder or co-founder role. Right now, my focus is on growing Moropo. We just launched last year, so we're still in early stages, still helping those early customers find success with the product.
Fantastic. Can you tell us a bit about how it was born? Where did it come about? How did the ideas develop?
Yeah, sure. So Moropo came actually from our previous business, which was an app development agency called Miroo. So we ran that business for a few years and scaled up to 7 figures. And I actually exited that last year. So that business worked really well. But this problem that we kept coming across was this challenge with testing. So we were a small agency, we were building mobile apps, and there would inevitably be some bugs in those mobile apps, or there would be some unintended consequences that came out of the development flow. So initially, what we did is we shared testing between our internal team and our clients. So mostly it was our poor project manager, bless him, who he would go through and have to go and check every feature in the app or make sure that we've resolved bugs in the app before sending it to the client, who would then do a final check and approval before we'd push up to the app stores. And over time, as we expanded the agency, we grew from just 2 of us to 15 of us in 2.5 years. So there was a lot of growth in that time, and we got to a point where the testing just became increasingly arduous. And so we had a couple of clients who were keen to explore automated testing, and so we ran a couple of pilot projects with them. Initially with an open source tool called Appium, and then secondly, a year later with an alternative open source tool, one of which is called XCUI Test, that's for iOS, and one which is UI Automator, and that's for Android. And those projects went okay, but we spent many weeks setting them up. So I remember with the Appium one, we put one of our best developers on it, and he spent 4 weeks just trying to set this thing up. And once it was set up, we were like, yeah, awesome. This is great. We've finally got these automated tests that are running through the application. We can see if we've introduced a regressive bug. We can capture that straight away without any human interaction. Wrong. What happened was that we ended up with all of these tests that took a really long time to maintain. And so we kept going through this maintenance process, spending days each week looking after these automated tests. And then we would get the PDF report out of Appium, and we'd go and show this to our client or go and show this to the UX designer, and they would look at it and be like, blah, 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 blah. I was like, I don't really understand any of this. This doesn't make any sense to me at all. Why the hell are we even doing this thing? When I manually test this, I know exactly what's wrong because I see that this button's not working or this doesn't flow exactly as I expect it to. But this automated testing is just full of jargon. And so me and my co-founder, we kind of sat around and we thought, there's a big problem here that isn't being addressed. So that's how we came up with the idea for Moropo. As an offshoot of that, we applied for some Innovate UK Smart Grant funding. So this is a scheme in the UK where you can go and it's a very competitive process. There's only 8% success rate. But we put a lot of effort into the application, and we won £350,000 to invest into building out the core R&D for Moropo. And that project finished last year, and we launched last August. So it's been an exciting period for us.
Fantastic. That sounds brilliant. So it sounds also like a lot of that happened in a relatively short space of time. The pressure must have been quite immense.
Yeah, it's been fast paced. That's how I like to work. I don't do well, Matt, in kind of an enterprise setting. I did have one enterprise job once, but the pace just really frustrated me. So yeah, I like to work fast, fail fast. I make a lot of mistakes, so I try and get them out of the way as early as possible.
While we're on that topic, could you tell us maybe a little bit about some of the learning curves that you've gone through, some important things that you may have realized along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the previous business was an agency, and the new business is a product business, and those are very different types of businesses to run. In an agency, it can be quite maximalist. You're looking at, how do I expand the team so that I can get as many people working and billing as many client hours as possible in order to maximize my revenue, in order to maximize my growth. And in a product company, it can feel very different. So we initially started out with a fairly large dev team. We were around 8 of us for a startup with our funding. That was pretty big. But what we ended up is actually slimming it right down. And a lot of that was to do with management layers, code review layers, but also around the kind of talent density. We now have a dev team of just 3, and actually we're producing twice as much work as we were as a team of 8. So there's a lot to think about there in terms of, those communication channels, because in an agency you're effectively in siloed projects. We would have 5 to 10 active clients at any one point. And so the developers that were on those separate projects, sure, they were friends, they chatted, they were on Slack, they were on, they come to the regular company meetups, whatever it might be, but they don't have to share knowledge in quite the same ways you do in a product company, because you're going so much deeper in a product company than you typically would in an agency engagement. The having fewer people that know more has been a huge benefit for us. And I wish I had learned that a year earlier, because we would have been a year ahead of where we are now.
Okay. I recently heard of another big company that did something similar, managed to trim down the numbers and worked quite successfully like that. That's an interesting thing. Tell us a little bit now. So you launched last year, August, right? And so obviously it's still in its infancy stages. What's coming up? What sort of big challenges are you looking at? What sort of milestones are you aiming towards?
So there's 2 big focuses for us at the moment. The first is making sure that a user who wants to test a mobile app can do everything they need to do inside the Moropo platform. So a lot of mobile testing infrastructure is split up into these tiny little bits. You're going to have your automation framework, then you're going to go and have your device farm, then you're going to go and have your test case management tool, and then you're going to go and have your results reports inspection. And as a quality assurance engineer, you have to go in and glue all of these bits together. And as we know, that takes a long time. What we want is for QA engineers to be really focused on the mobile apps they're shipping, not building the tooling they need to test their mobile app. So a lot of our focus is making sure that people can go and do everything they need to go and do inside the Moropo platform. What that looks in reality is things like branching, for example, the ability to take your tests and go and create a new branch from them, and then start to build out new tests that reflect what the development team is doing, so that you can start to build your tests earlier into the development lifecycle. So yeah, getting pretty technical there. But for example, yesterday we had a sign up from I won't share their name, but they're worth multiple billions of dollars, and one of their QA members logged on to Moropo, and she created. We have all this kind of product analytics, and she created her first test for their mobile app in under 10 minutes without leaving her browser. She then spent another 6 hours building a series of tests. And so in a single day on first sign up, she's managed to build a pretty good automated test suite on mobile. And that's, the stuff that me and my team were playing around a couple of years ago, that would have taken weeks and weeks and weeks to get to that point. So So
Wow.
what we're doing is getting all of that kind of user experience tooling around that QA person so that they can go and be as effective as possible in as short time as possible, because they don't want to be spending time worrying about their testing pipeline or their test automation framework. They just want to ship really good apps. And so, that's kind of the first focus for us. And then the second focus is around stability. So, this is something that we didn't realize initially in the kind of early stages of the company, and we're actually spending a lot of focus on over the last 6 to 9 months, is ensuring that when you use Moropo, you can trust it. Because when you're testing, false positives, false negatives, they have a huge impact on your ability to trust those tests. And when you can't trust them, then the whole thing breaks down, because they're your green tick, right? They're your safeguard into releasing to the app store and shortening that development cycle and shortening that release cycle. So we're doing a lot of work on our underlying infrastructure, making sure that we're optimizing all of our test runner code, making sure that all of our network, infrastructure is upgraded and as best as possible, so that it's quicker, more stable, and people can really, really trust it. That's basically everything we're doing this year.
Fantastic. And if you don't mind, can we touch a little bit on the technology, the use of things like AI products and things that are being developed at the moment? How are you integrating that into your programs? What is that doing for your company?
In terms of how we're using AI as a team, we do a little bit on copilots for coding. So we'll run a little bit with some copilots just to accelerate development effectiveness. And we'll also do it to help bridge skill gaps. So for example, recently we were writing the ability to mimic offline mode on iOS. Really specific use case, but really important test case if you have users who have patching network. For that, we had to write all of that in Swift, and no one in the team knew any Swift code. So we used AI to help bridge that gap in terms of translating what we wanted to do into actual code. In terms of what we're doing with the product is actually nothing right now. And that's intentional, because our two closest competitors are going heavy in on AI. But what we're finding, especially in the testing world, is that hallucinations in AI again create that false positive, that false negative scenarios. And so we are intentionally being really conservative with our use of AI in the product, not because we're skeptical of AI itself, but just because we don't want to do anything to erode that trust barrier in those results. Right now, there's a bit of a backlash in some parts of the testing community where they don't want to use AI, or they're very skeptical of AI use. And so we're being a little bit more cautious with how we do that. And I think inevitably at some point we will introduce AI to the product, but the way we want to do it is very different from how our competitors are doing it, which is where they just bake it in and you have to trust them and it's a bit of a black box. We want to do it in a much more transparent way when we go through that process. So, that might look like integrating and connecting with your existing AI tools and Moropo shares data between them, as opposed to Moropo hides that AI interface. And so if you're a bigger enterprise who doesn't want to share data through the public AI tools, then you can hook into your private AI tool. So that's probably the route we're going to go down with the product.
Talking about your team and that, tell me a little bit about acquiring the right kind of people, finding people that match your vision and that you can trust. What is that like for you, bringing people on board?
It's something that I'm not necessarily the best person to answer, because I've changed my mind on this a lot over the years. The continuing characteristics I look for is a bias for action and also having a strong technical base. So we sell to developers or developer adjacent roles like QA engineers. And when you're talking to that audience, you have to have a base technical knowledge. So actually everyone in my team, regardless of what they do, has been an engineer of some sort, not necessarily a software programmer. They know and they understand systems, and they think in a system-like way. And because we all think in a system-like way and have these engineering mantras, it means that we are able to be really cohesive in terms of our culture and our approach to problems. And that works really well for our business. That's not right for every business. If you're running a creative agency, definitely don't do that. That's a really bad idea. But for our world, where it is very technical and it is very process driven, having that engineering mindset works really well. And we've made the mistake before of hiring people who haven't been engineers, and it just hasn't worked out because they spent so much time being confused about the underlying systems and processes that they've not actually got to the point where they can contribute effectively in the team. The other point around bias for action, in startup world, you just kind of have to get on with it. It's very easy to overthink things. It's very easy to overplan things. And the best advice is just to keep moving forward. So whenever I'm hiring, I always look for people who have that tendency, who just want to get on with stuff. Hopefully that's helpful to some of your audience.
Absolutely. Talking about getting on with things and moving forward without giving away any secrets, because we know you've got competition out there. Do you have a big plan? Is there a big target for the future?
No, is the short answer, Matt. The way that I like to think about planning is really I guess you could say the 37 signals approach to it, where you can come and put together these grand visions, but the underlying ecosystem is changing so rapidly right now that often those plans end up getting thrown away. And so what I like to do is plan in 6 to 8 week bursts where we can be really focused about what the target is. So for example, right now we're really focusing on infrastructure and stability, and that is all the team is focused on. Sure, there's a little bit of peripheral stuff around customer servicing and chats like this, but the primary focus for the whole company right now is stability improvements, infrastructure improvements, and the efficiencies that go around that. Now, when this particular 6 to 8 week focus ends, which will be kind of end of June, beginning of July, what we'll do is we'll sit down, we'll have a break, we'll park all of that stuff, and we'll say, okay, what we're going to do for the next 6 months, so 6 weeks rather, and that allows us to be a lot more intentional and make decisions a lot later, because some of these grand visions, they make sense now, but they really don't in the long term. And so the grand vision is to create a sustainable, profitable company, but how we do that will change as the ecosystem changes.
That's something interesting that you brought up there with the rapid change. We know how quick these sorts of things move. What do you do to stay ahead? How do you stay ahead of the curve and keep up to date with all the latest developments? Do you have any special strategies? Do you have somebody on this?
I read a lot of newsletters, I'll tell you that much. I'm subscribed to, at one point I think it was around 20 newsletters. That became a bit too much, so I had to cut it down. But I'm on at least 10 newsletters, and I read them all. I skim read them all, I should say, and then I touch in on bits that are of particular interest or particular relevancy. That's the main bit of it. I'm not a huge fan of social media, so I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, but I try not to spend too much time on them because they're distracting. But yeah, newsletters are really good because you've got that controlled format and the curation as well. So they're a really good place to keep up with trends.
I like that. Well, Tom, look, is there anything that I might have skipped over? Is there anything that you think would be relevant to mention? Maybe where people can get in touch with you if they're interested in Moropo?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn is where I'm most active. I'm on it every day. Twitter, I log in once a week. So yeah, less so there. If you want to give Moropo a spin, if you've got a mobile app, you can go on. We're currently free trial, but we're looking at moving into a freemium model as well soon. So you'll be able to go and play around and build your tasks and get comfortable and fall in love with the platform before you open your wallet. So yeah, go on, have a play around, send me some feedback, and enjoy.
Fantastic. Tom, thank you again for taking your time to be with us today. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and we will be keeping an eye on you for the future.
Cheers, Matt. Appreciate it.